Welcome to the Replenishing Life Project. 30 days to recover from burnout and reclaim your vitality. With your hosts, Morgan B. and Lucy Ann Chard.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Replenishing Life Project. I'm Lucy Ann Chard and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Morgan B. Hey Morgan.
Hi.
And today we are incredibly excited to introduce our guest to you, Bella Krystal. Bella is a quantum alignment facilitator, weaving many paths into one, threading DNA activation, gene keys, human design, kundalini, tantra, and shamanism into everything she does. Bella, welcome to the show. It's such an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much.
So, Bella, we'd like to start by asking you to share your story with us about your experience of burnout.
Yeah, and that could be a long story, and I'm trying to do the short version. I guess my whole life was kind of like a path into burnout. So I was, all from the age of 12 when I started getting grades, it became so extremely important to actually have the best grade, because at that age, like 12, 13, you don't really know what worthiness is. And then you have this scale where they can put, from 1 to 10 on you. And of course you want the 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have so many other reference points for your worthiness. So from that point, I just kind of, mentally thought that if there is something that people say this is good, I should be able to do at least that. So it became really like a, kind of a struggle and a battle to always make sure A+ wasn't enough. It was like I had to be up all night. I had to record my books in school and walk with my dog in the forest listening to my books, because at that time we didn't have playlists, or, it was like tapes, and that's, that mindset was with me my whole life. Then I went to business. High school was really hard because of that. And on the outside, it all looked perfect. It looked like it was easy for me. It looked like, it was just kind of a piece of cake. But actually on the inside, it was an enormous nervousness all the time. And I would have IBS, although I have like a really powerful constitution. When you stress your body that much with that kind of pressure, your systems just go out. So I had a lot of, weight loss through periods of like my school years. And I went to business school, which like even more, I have never really had panic attacks, but that environment, I remember when I had to present, like, do a presentation or something, I would feel like I was so in the wrong environment, and that what I was saying was so not aligned with who I was. So I remember even taking something for, the heartbeat, like blood pressure medicine, to be calm. And it's like, it was forcing yourself for things that you're resisting. Your true nature is resisting it. And that went up to, I guess it was more, even when I was a consultant, there were many fun things. So when I started working, I could choose projects. It was more fun. And actually, I had a period of my life when I was running a nightclub. That was fun as well, but I could never, it was this limitless thing. I never knew when enough was enough. So I would be working all night, and then I would have to be in the office at 9 o'clock. So I would, instead of sleeping 2 hours, I might go to the gym 1 hour.
Wow.
So it was this just crazy mind, willpower way of living. And also, people saying, how can you sleep 2 hours and still function? And I was like, well, I eat really healthy and I work out, kind of that story. And it worked, because I was deluding myself that it worked. And then I think it was by the age of, 28, 29, where it really my body just started to say, this doesn't work. And it went to a point where basically everything fell apart. I was engaged, I was living in New York. I had on the outside everything that you think that I thought that I wanted to have, kind of, what society said was the best thing. It was exciting. I was with an only child, we were, adventurous, we would travel, but then everyday life was actually still very kind of into that, how things have to be and how much you have to work. So I just had, like, there was this thing inside, and it was, I think that the body thing was not the reason for me to stop. What happened was that I would wake up in the morning, I would have this anxiety, here, and I would like look at him, and I wasn't even able to cry, but I would have like tears coming down my eyes, and I would say like, I don't know what's going on, but I feel like I'm dying inside.
Wow.
I don't know what it is. I just know I can't do this. So basically, I went to Sweden for a business project. He felt like I abandoned him, but I didn't, I didn't have any good solution. And then my whole life fell apart. That relation, like the whole, everything fell apart. I didn't have my life anymore, and I had been out of Sweden for 9 years at the time. I was in the States. So coming back, not having anything after having lived in France and in the US, everything just fell apart. And I spent, I would say, at least a winter, more than a winter, kind of in an Airbnb in Stockholm. Still, everything looked nice on the outside, but I felt like I was stuck to the floor by some force that I couldn't put a name on. And I think, it's part of like, I understood years later, it's kind of those, entities in a way that took me down, came back to me, and said it's like the voice was, when there is no self-acceptance and self-love, that's why the world looked like it does. And there would not be any wars, there would not be any divorces. It's like, if we would just be able to love ourselves and value ourselves for who we are, then we can't be tacked to the floor by demons, which I can see that now. But it took me to fall that deep down and to feel, what have I been doing at that point, it was like the last 10 years of my life. I felt like I've just been working. And even if you looked, people are saying, no, you're just being depressed, or, I didn't have that much contact, but it became really dark, because I was wondering what I had done with my precious life, and how it could go so bad when you think that you've done everything right.
I can relate with what you're saying so much. And I know that we have some of our other speakers, a lot of our other speakers have also talked about, that pushing, and that, that drive, or having to, get it right, or do more, or not feeling enough. And so oftentimes what has happened, or what we've seen throughout our interviews, is that people have this point where their body breaks down, or lots of things happen in their life to make them, to get them to stop and to take a moment and review what's going on. So in that moment, or during that time, what led you to explore that more of this feeling of not good enough, or needing to be more? What did it naturally happen, or did you come across some things, or how did that?
I would say in those maybe 6 months or 8 months, there was nothing. And maybe that's actually a good thing to say, because there are moments where you are trying so hard to make sense of it, and you're trying so hard to actually say it's okay, but there's no soothing. So there was a time for me that there was no soothing. I didn't have a way out. That my only feeling was, how could it end up like this? It was even that. It was feeling like an end point. It wasn't feeling like a new beginning.
Yeah.
And what it took for me was to completely actually change. I don't feel it was an escape. I think it was necessary. So I had felt it all, and I've seen my life kind of, in a movie so many times, and there was nothing more to see in a way. Either I would just die in that, or something would click and I would be able to snap out of it. And I think that could have been my learning in this incarnation, and maybe, I would have had to come back another time. But what happened was that I actually said yes to a business project in San Diego. And I remember sitting on the bathroom floor in my gym, not having the energy, because my thyroid and my adrenals were completely out. They didn't work at all. So I remember sitting like in a corner in a bathroom, or in a locker room in the gym, and they were going to close. And I was like, it was 11 p.m. And I was like, if I don't buy these tickets now and go, I know, this is like a breaking point. So I remember buying the tickets, being up all night packing, because I knew that if I didn't get that push, it wouldn't happen. And then I went there, and kind of magically, and this has happened a couple of times in my life, that's, I guess, why I believe in magic. When I got there, it was like everything, it was like I have been washed out of darkness in a way. And I actually got energy, like instant energy somehow, to just, go get into the project and be that kind of pillar that I'm usually that I'm used to actually being in the projects, where I am the person where people can lean on. We had water damage and like inundations, and I was really that pillar. And the beautiful thing, I think it's connected to purpose. It's like when the human beings start to feel purpose again, then it's like there's nothing that can stop us anymore. The purpose realign us, and then suddenly, energy comes. So in one way, it's true that burnout takes a lot of time to heal. And on the other hand, it's like once we realign, then the universe also helping us to take those steps so that we can rebuild again.
Oh yeah, that's really, really beautiful and true. That resonates as real truth with a capital T. I'd love to. So you wrote something incredibly beautiful that I'd like to share in your bio, and you talk about the modalities of the gene keys and human design, and how they reveal the gifts and the challenges encoded in our DNA, and empower us to transmute shadow patterns into gold. I mean, that just makes my whole body tingle. So, can you tell us a little bit more about the discovery of these modalities? What are they, and how did you come about them?
Yeah, it like ties perfectly into the chronology of the events. So I was in San Diego. I was working. I was having breakfast one day, and I just saw the body graph, and I knew that I thought it was something familiar with it. So I thought I've seen it before, and I texted my friend, and I was like, "Have you seen this?" And he's like, "Yes." And actually, I know this person, Rosie Aronson. She's up in San Francisco, and I've signed up for her 8-week course. And then, for me, then it was like, oh, this is so exciting. So I signed up with her too. And in that, when I was in that project, I actually got to drive up and to see her in her house. And she was a human design coach. She was also doing programs that you could sign up for. And she was painting or, drawing the wisdom keepers, which are all the faces that each gene key has a face. So it's like, just like, on a silver platter, it was just served to me, and I was so ready, because it, even if things just really shifted, it was always, or I mean, years after, it was that underlying thing, like, what happened? It's really scary when your reality falls apart and you don't really know, it's so quick sometimes, because you've been driving, like you were saying, Morgan, like you've been driving and pushing for so long. So once it really just, once everything shatters, it's even hard to like put your head around how it could go so quickly, or how you suddenly can be so unable to actually go back on track. So yeah, so I think it was part of that inquiry to be, okay, I want to make sure that I don't push myself into this place again. And also, what was it that went so wrong? So for me, it was an instrument of self-discovery and to understand myself and my patterns better, because I knew, I was always very self-aware. So I wasn't driving on autopilot, not feeling what my body was telling me. I'm always been very, I'm a sacred generator in human design. I have the 46 that is about to being here in physical form. Like, I feel a lot. So my body had been telling me, so I knew there was some kind of conflict between my mind and my, my body and my true self. And that was, it was very, how human design spoke in these very terms, of course, made me very just curious to see if that could be a tool of self-understanding.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. And so, okay. So you learned a lot about human design, and then so Gene Keys was there at the same time you were learning human design. So what made you kind of, or what's your experience with Gene Keys, or what made you sort of gravitate toward that versus human design, or or bridging them together? Yes, how did that come about?
Yeah, so mhm. I guess that I have a little bit of a, I'm a little bit unique in the way I'm seeing it. And also for this discussion, I do feel like human design, when it comes to that explanation of what's going on or what went wrong, human design is amazing because you have this map that tells you like, this is your conditioning, this is the pressure you have from the outside, can be your downfall if you listen to it. But it's not you. It's actually, how you try to show up in the world because you're in fear. You're not in self-acceptance and self-love. So for me, that was that, unworthiness. It was, not wanting to go into conflict, but doing too much. It was that like open head where like, there's so many ideas. So I just want to say yes to everything. So it was so clear that I had been living from my open centers. And I think anybody who goes into human design and learn about that, when you start to understand what your design is, it just becomes such a, confirmation that, okay, this is me and this is what I've been doing that is not really, the truest part of me. I've been doing it out of wanting to fit in or wanting to like not being able to not feel the pressure. So that was the first step. And then for me, it wasn't a choice, the gene keys. So they came in, like we say, at basically the same time. I think it was when I did the golden path, which is the first activation sequence, when you take a journey through your activations. And that's when it clicks more. Like that's when you feel like it has to do with the DNA. For me, human design had to do with deconditioning and starting to listen to my authentic self and starting to live from my authentic self. The gene keys was an activation, like there were things that started to like pull, I could feel it. I could feel like the visceral part of it as well. And it was threading everything. It was threading my childhood with my life today, with my relationships. And just, for me, the word, it's like, it made so much sense. But sense in a way that was also much more on an emotional level and helped me on an emotional level. Human design was still for me in the beginning. Now it's become mystic and magical. But in the beginning, it was much more about, so the way I see it is the human design is more masculine way, a more left brain way. So it's kind of, the father figure who explains to you what went wrong, how you can do better, what's your strategy, how you make a decision. It's a really good father figure. And then you have the gene keys that is that is kind of the marriage with human design. And then you have this feminine storytelling that says, everything is okay. Your shadow is there because it's a door to your gifts. And she just takes you into this journey where your whole life starts to weave in your ancestry. And you also include spirituality and the heart and the other realms. And sometimes in human design, it's become a little bit, some people do human design in a way that is kind of rigid. So when I say listen from the heart, some people in human design says, no, you can only listen from 3 gates. And it's like, and then then for me, it's limiting. We are limiting ourselves in a way that is not necessary. So for me, like with everything in life and how I see burnout as well, it's like the masculine, the feminine, the receptive, the poetic, the all-embracing that says the shadow is not wrong. Come with it here and seeks the door to the gift. That's for me why, if I kind of have to choose, the gene keys are, that's what we all come into the feminine in the world and to receive into vulnerability. Like there's so much with that part of us, the yielding that we are learning. So I feel like in a time right now in the world, the gene keys is the transmission that is so nurturing for us and that can really be integrated in our life in so many ways. And it's also, you don't need to study that much. It's a very deep contemplation, and the more time you spend in it, the deeper it's going to go. But even just through me walking you through it, it already feels like there's something moving in you. And I that's why I went from doing it with myself only to doing it with people, because the self-discovery that is there, and it's not just, like I said, it's not just explaining who you are, it's also telling you, where you're going, aligned with your soul. So it has, with human design and the genes, both are that thing, your soul imprint and your personality imprint, and the dance and the play. And human design can be that. It's just the cement, like the language that we have used with it sometimes make it feel more rigid. So that's kind of how I see it, and why. And also the other thing I have to say is that I think it was a resonance too with it. You know, I'm a 4/6. Richard Rudd is a 4/6. His language, his way, he has the same vocation. So that goes from unease, intuition, and clarity. So there is just something. You know, we're speaking about these soul fractals as well in the Gene Key. So when we find them, that's when we can create in the world. So when we find something that resonates, whether it's the tone, the language, the feeling, you know, I think it's important to follow that and to take that in and to feel, yeah, because that's many times with burnout is when we have stopped actually going on that intuition, and we are being trapped in the unease in our bodies, so that we can't have clarity, we can't have intuition. So yeah, that's how I see it.
I love hearing you talk about it, because it feels like it's dancing. You know, as you speak about it, there's a sense of movement and momentum, which is so exciting. It is a living transmission, and I love the integration of how you're weaving them together. I've certainly found that very, very healing and very empowering. Following your work in the way that you do that, so thank you. I found, you know, in our experience of doing this project, aligned with what you're saying, it's a common theme with people who are experiencing burnout to be stuck in the mind and not connected to the body. And for me, human design and the Gene Keys together really help to, as you say, open up that heart space, which is not always comfortable, but it's so important. And I know for me, learning about in my hologenetic profile, which perhaps you can talk a little bit more about in the Gene Keys, the gate 40 is in my vocation and my culture, and that's been a huge learning experience, particularly around the shadow aspects of exhaustion. So if we can kind of lean into that, let's talk about some of the keys in the hologenetic profile and how, you know, how that can filter into our life, really.
Yeah, so like I say, it's like a journey, and you start with the activations that have to do with the moment you were born, like where the sun was. So we can kind of see that it's like astrology. You look at, you know, I'm Taurus, but this is much more precise because it's looking at the sun and the earth, and then it's also looking at the sun and the earth 3 months before. So that is the soul activation. And it will tell you, it's, you know, we call it the incarnation cross in human design, so it exists there as well. It's really kind of seeing what is the destiny, you know, what is the purpose, basically. And that is our genius, because it is that, you know, just astrology wouldn't be so big even if the Taurus can be a whole month, right?
Yes.
But the Genius are so much more precise, because time-wise we have 64 keys in a year. So it's people that are born in like 5.7 days. So already there. And then we also look at even more precise, you know, so it is your blueprint. And it's the way of explaining it it's really, you can feel, like I haven't met anybody who didn't feel like, yeah. And so that is the first sequence, and it's kind of your blueprint, it's your destiny, but it doesn't really tell you how you get there, right? It's just like, it's just a snapshot of like your life in a way. And it shows you, like I said, the Jinkies always shows you the contracted way of living it and the expansive way of living it. So you can see it kind of in the, you know, in the shadow frequency, or you can see it in the inner, more open and loving frequency. So it also gives you the feeling that nothing is bad. It's just your imprint can be lived out at, you know, in a frequency, bad, low, or, you know, higher frequency, but it's not really bad. And as a human being, we're here, it's a spectrum, so we're here to like really feel of the spectrum, because that's what makes us human, right? And that's what makes us approachable. And then the next sequence, the next activations have to do with relationships. And it's saying we basically don't need anything else in our life as a spiritual path than the mirroring of our relationship, if we go into them, you know, with an open heart more than anything. And the beautiful thing is, it doesn't only tell us that we have to do that. It actually takes us through the keys where it shows us how to do that. And we are calling it the Trinity of Embodiment. So there are 3 keys, and they're Venus and Mars in different positions. So they're telling us, how could it look if we were stuck in the mind, the IQ all the time? How does our life look?
Mm-hmm.
And then it takes us back through the pathway of true intelligence to the EQ, the emotional intelligence. And it tells us how to thread that. And it kind of gives us a way of starting to, if we have closed off emotionally in one way, or if we're living from emotional defense, it shows us how in life can start to include that EQ. And how to, so like we're saying, it's not always comfortable,
No.
but it kind of helps us to take it in more portions. My EQ is about seriousness. And about apathy, so it's like I just checked out from my life and I became really serious, and it was a kind of apathy because I wasn't living in the light and ecstasy, which is the higher frequency. So you can see in a small portion I can include playfulness in my life, or I can be there, I can be sympathetic, apathy, sympathy. I can start to have sympathize with myself when it feels like everything is just serious and there's no joy. So it's like it really kind of shows you how to start also including the whole spectrum of your intelligence. And then the third one on the top is the SQ. And the beautiful and interesting thing here is that that's the spiritual intelligence, but also the physical intelligence. So that has a lot to do with our first imprint when we were too young to be able to process emotionally or intellectually. And that pathway between the EQ and the SQ is about love. So it's really coming back, and it's also part of accepting whatever happened to us when we were too young to actually be able to do anything. So it's an enormous self-acceptance and self-love, and it's helping us to become, the parents that we maybe didn't have our 7 first years. It's really to become, to reclaim our true intelligence and our true depth of emotion, so that we can come back and parent ourselves. And once we do that, it also shows us, it tells us that in the body we have all the wisdom, and that's kind of the portal. So there's a lot, we could say the SQ is that kind of, it's the cellular. We kind of, many times we need breath work or body work. It's like what's in there before we even remember. And once we allow, the energy to go there, there's so much that we can't even remember. So many of us say, like, I can't really remember my childhood, but that's the door to it. And then the next step, what I'm working with, which I'm working with Richard now, because what I have discovered through that is that, that also the inner feminine, the inner masculine, and your life force, it's, kind of hiding, or not hiding, but it's there in that SQ. So that's where I also include how to, the life force, how that actually, like I was saying, when we align, the life force can start to flow from our body. And that is extremely healing. We want to live from there. So that's the middle sequence of the gene keys. And then the third sequence is called the Pearl sequence, and it's about the outer manifestation. So more like planets like Jupiter and Mars and the Sun. And it's about, once you're aligned, what is it? And it ties back to those first 4. Like, what are you here to do in the world? How can you serve the whole, from that place where you're already serving yourself? And it really gives you also kind of some details. Do you work best alone on a daily basis? Or do you work best in a little team? Or are you somebody who should like overview something but not really get to work? So it gives us so much to make life, natural, and more naturalness and ease in our everyday life. And at the same time, we're actually serving the world in the very best way we can.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I love that. And I love how the gene keys, yes, it's the path, it's like a path, and you follow along the path. And so each key has a shadow side, as Lucianne mentioned, a gift, and then the city. So would you say that are there certain keys that sort of have more of could lean more towards suffering from burnout, or could potentially go to through a burnout? Or is it more about what you're saying, like the shadow aspect, how you had the shadow aspect of seriousness, and if we kind of get stuck in the shadows of our keys, that leads to a burnout? Or are there specific...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand the question. I would say this is where, for burnout, I absolutely feel human design, we need it. Human design is a body graph. We see the body. We can see how things are moving. We can see if somebody has a defined sacral center, a regenerated energy. So for me, it's very important to look at how the energy moves in the body. Or if somebody comes to me and says, I just divorced, and this, these 24 years of marriage, I don't know, but that is like, drained like the last little piece of that energy out of me. Then I want to actually look at the combined chart between these two people and see how the energy was flowing. So for me, human design is part of the diagnosis, like see that. And then with the gene keys, they are going to tell you the story. If you look at the shadow patterns, and I would say that there are some, more than saying that there are some keys, I would say there are some positions in the chart. So you would see the evolution, in the first sequence, which is the challenge there. That would be, you would like to look at that and see, okay, if you have, for me, if I don't break out of like numbness or anxiety, I cannot do anything in my life. That is my way out. If you are a fifth line, if you don't break out of misunderstandings, your life can become really complicated.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's a very important.
Yes.
And for the sixth line, where it's about compromise. If you don't hold if you're not able to hold your higher vision, but you compromise because you feel the world is not there, then you're also bypassing, and it's very easy that you burn out. So for me, and the breakers as well, there are key. Yeah.
Very much.
And I think that's the first place. If we don't, because Richard Rudd says that life's work, which is the first one, and then evolution, so the sun and the earth in the moment you were born, a lot of people stay in those in that challenge their whole life and don't really break through to the veil of understanding what the soul wants. So that and there is a one-liner that I always work with everybody with, for that. So for me, like I said, for me, it's like breaking out of anxiety by, coming back to my heart and realizing that maybe it's, once I'm in my heart, nothing looks that bad and big. And for the fifth line, breaking out of misunderstanding, it's coming back to your vulnerability. Because when the fifth line is vulnerable, the world is open for you, and people are not going to project on you anymore because they see you truly are. And for the sixth line, it's like, you are that light that when we look at you, we know that we are evolving. So we want you to be that light so we can believe in your vision with you, and then you are fully nurtured. So it's like that is a one-liner for whatever line we have there to look at. And the EQ, I feel, is very important too, because like you say, often when it's burnout, we are living in fight and flight. So we are not in our parasympathetic nervous system. We are in the sympathetic, so we are surviving. And then it's like emotions are just like not safe. So we close down that EQ. So when we can start to look at the EQ and thread it in that trinity I talked about, then as well we're opening up a lot. And I would say that the culture can actually be important too, because that's what I was saying, how do you work on a daily basis. So let's say you're somebody who really work well in partnership. So you actually you want to have like maybe 2-3 partnerships in your life where it's like really like that's where you're focused. But let's say you have a team where you have to supervise 48 people. Of course that can lead you to burnout. So in that too, that culture sphere has a lot to do with our daily life, how we organize ourselves, which actually is a big part also of the burnout. It's not always an inner unworthiness or wanting to do more, afraid of conflict. It can also just be actually operational, like our life is organized in a way that is unhuman in a way, or not, not really what we're good for. So that's part of that. When we can be, like I say, when it comes to business, the synergy, when we can be in a group, an organization, we have every person in the right position where it's easy for them to accomplish, what their task is, then, we have the best possible, outcome is going to come from that. And that's in the team, that's in the organization, that's in the country, that's in the world, that's in the universe,
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Yes, to that. Yes, please. Yeah. I know that when I was working in corporate, I used to work in corporate television, and that was one of the big red flags for me in my experience of burning out. And I have a lot of sacral energy. I'm a manifesting generator, but it was firing, and I misused my energy, and I really pushed myself to a point where, you know, it was exhausting. And you know, that I love what you're saying there about being, when we are aligned with purpose and we have that sense of connection to what is meaningful to us, what is purposeful to us, that can be a huge transformational step in our healing journey. So tell us a little bit about what that looked like for you and how it felt, and what started to change in your life.
Yeah, I mean, it was a journey. It didn't go from one day to another. And I also feel like what was our challenge one time is never like, this is what we came here to resolve in this lifetime. So whatever that is for me, the perfectionism and the wanting to do my best and the feeling that I'm never doing enough, you know, it's there. It's there in almost every day. It's there. The difference is that it doesn't dictate how I live my life completely. You know, some days it does, but most of the day it doesn't. So it's this awareness of actually, you know, knowing what you have on the table and being able to choose, and to choose a life that is more, you know, it's kind of this spiral that it's always, the spirals are bigger with more awareness, with more love, with more possibilities. So I think what changed was that I accepted myself more how I am, and I stopped trying to push myself into, you know, the consulting world where I had to travel and wake up in Bangkok one day, and then, you know, it's like there were times where I didn't even know the first, you know, tenths of a second where I'm at. And for me, you know, it's like my life's work is about orientation in the moment. It's the feminine principle. So the feminine principle, like being boxed in a structure of like the consulting world and all that, it was so not like in my blueprint. Just having that confirmation from the Gene Keys and Human Design that that's not how I'm supposed to work, and I'm responding in the moment. I would know my flight 6 months ahead, like I don't know how many, you know, dozens of flights ahead. I would know the day and often the time in the airport. And I was like, this is the things that I'm remembering in my, you know, this is what I'm using my consciousness for. So, and of course, I mean, I think that's the same thing with you. We all know that if you don't have any experience, if you don't have any life experience, you've never been into any system, and you find the Gene Keys and Human Design, it's probably not going to do anything to you. You know, the thing, you know, it's like it's everything that we have accumulated of wisdom in our life and life experience and hard times. That is what makes us, you know, kind of cook everything together and synthesize it and make sense of it. So what started to change is that I started to say no to things that I didn't have energy for, or even knowing that maybe there was money in it, but actually I knew was going to drain me. Because for all of us who are generators or manifesting generators, which are 70% of people, then we want to do things where we feel regenerated and satisfied. And we can see a parallel in the Gene Keys, which is, you know, serve yourself. Like what is the best way to serve the world through serving yourself? So it's, you know, it's that great question that we have in the Gene Keys that are underpinning everything too. So it's so much about coming back home first, so that we can radiate in the world something that is so much different than what we function from pushing and what we were speaking about from the beginning.
That's so powerful. Let's just digest that question for a second. How can you serve the world by best serving yourself? That's a really powerful question. Love it.
Yeah, that's good. So Bella, you have some free gift for our listeners. And can you talk a little bit more about that? Definitely, if our listeners are interested in learning more about their gene key, their gene keys, their hologenetic profiles, and learning more about that.
Yeah. So first I was thinking that I could have an offer for people to work with me one-on-one, like, you know, for a short first time reading. So that's a possibility. What I wanted to kind of bring is that teamwork for me has been a big part, both of my burnout is actually a little bit, but also my way back. Because I used to put I always loved teamwork, and I used to put all my trust and all my, you know, resources and everything in partnership. thinking that the more I was putting in, the more that person was also going to put in. And I was really burned. And this was actually during my burnout, when I didn't have the energy to work. I would actually fund projects. And then in most of the cases, you know, the more they were signing a contract, but the more I put in, the more people actually, you know, ran away, and I was left with more, feeling more depleted. And also as a fourth line, you know, I'm working from the heart. I just felt completely robbed of everything, you know. When more I wanted teamwork, more alone I found myself. So what I wanted to bring in is that part of my way back has been to being able to discern what is a healthy partnership, what is true teamwork. So now I'm working with 2 other women, so we are like a little trinity, and we are discovering this together. Like, what is true teamwork, and what is it to, you know, to have respect for yourself and for the others? What is listening? And knowing that when we work together, there are going to be moments where, you know, there are going to be moments where we kind of feel tense, or we don't know how to go about something, and to be able to come to the group and be vulnerable, like we were saying about that, and not think it's a too big of an issue so that we go out of it, and to not, you know, lose the vision. So all these things we're speaking about. So what I wanted to, so we are working together, and we have, you know, courses. So what I was thinking is we have a membership group, and it's about learning to live in alignment with your design, with your blueprint, with your soul. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to offer going into that group for like a really just super discounted rate, so 11 a month, for people to just taste it. And it's no, you know, after 1 month you can go out of, you don't have to be in it, but just because I feel there's something with doing it together that is so important. And then you are part of a Facebook group, because Gene Keys and human design in the beginning is kind of a solitary journey. And if I would have had from the beginning, I didn't go into the Facebook group until a couple of years in. I mean, now Facebook and all that is maybe bigger, but there's something about, you know, doing it together. And where somehow with human design, I feel like I'm still today like a little bit cautious what I post in the groups, because the response can be quite harsh if you're doing something wrong, or, you know. So, you know, it's kind of that forum where I feel the forums that I'm in. So I have a Facebook group that is of course free to be part of it. And if you go into it, you know, you can kind of you could like write something that you watch this, and then I can promise you I will do like a little free, because I do that with most of the people that post the charts. I do like a mini reading, 5-10 minutes. So that's like, also, that's a gift that you know, it actually doesn't matter if it's part of this, but it's something that where I feel like if somebody goes through a door and we can put our hand and welcome, you know, then that is already so much, because that first step is often the hardest step to take, you know, the first step into something new.
Yeah.
So that's a long explanation for that, but I guess there's going to be links where we will put them and explain everything for people.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's incredibly generous of you. Thank you. And we will put all of your links to your website and to where people can find you in your amazing Facebook groups that you run. And that's really exciting. So I'm sure that our listeners and our viewers will be taking advantage of that. So we had a question that we wanted to ask you about if you could send a loving and supportive message to your younger self from, say, 20 years ago, what would you say to her?
Yeah, I would say I would like take her and I would like stroke her head and I would say, it's gonna be okay. I promise you it's gonna be okay. And when you're tired, you can just stop. And you know, I would actually let her see my tears so that she understands that it's really important.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you, Bella. Thank you so much for coming on to this interview series and for your insights and your depth of knowledge and all that you're sharing with others and with the world. And we just really appreciate that. So thank you. And yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to all the listeners out there. And
yeah, Thank you so much, Bella. It's been such an honor.
Thank you guys for doing this. I mean, I've been doing this work for years, and I've never had the possibility and the opportunity to speak like this. So,
Oh,
my story hasn't been out there either. So just for all of us, when we can do this collectively together, there's so much work, like there's so much value in that. So, from my heart, thank you so much for letting me share with you and be here.
Oh, thanks.